Before this video begins, I want to level with you guys. I am not the biggest Star Wars fan. I will likely never be the biggest Star Wars fan on this fucking platform, and I'm okay with that. But I do have some thoughts about this new Star Wars news drop, and I'm really excited to talk about it because there's several things that need to be addressed when it comes to the Star Wars franchise going forward after the Skywalker Saga has now officially wrapped. The first thing is that multiple films are in development, and overlap with characters and timelines could impact things in other films. This is just a cinematic universe that they're creating with Star Wars, and they've been doing that since The Mandalorian had dropped. After The Mandalorian dropped, they started interweaving stories and becoming one in the same. Issue is, I think we're coming to this, is that there's no big bad anymore. Palpatine's dead, he's died twice now, you can't bring him back. I understand that you may feel the need to go back to Palpatine because of nostalgia, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but the fact of the matter is that the MCU worked so well for a good decade plus because of Thanos existing and that being the big bad, and it's the main complaint that happened with Phase 4. As much as I love Phase 4, people had a problem with it because they did not know where they were going. Now, there's a little bit of a shining light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to like Doctor Doom, and people are now back on board with Marvel. It's a whole thing. People want to know where they're going with the cinematic universe. They don't want to be invested in something when there's no payoff. That's why people didn't like the Dark Universe. That's why people didn't like the DCU. It wasn't focused. Now, you need to have a focus, and Palpatine, Darth Vader, they're all both dead. You can't really go to them. It's where do you go from there? And there's plenty of people in the Star Wars universe you probably can pull from. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. I don't have any ideas for this. I'm sure my buddy Geek, who is the biggest Star Wars fan I know, can think of 1,000 bigger bad guys than Palpatine. You can go back to Old Republic probably, and that'd be fantastic. Rey is aimed to be the key character in a lot of these cinematic universe films. Love this. Daisy Ridley has struggled to get jobs after the Skywalker Saga had wrapped up, mainly because fans were so vitriol and had so much concentrated hatred on Rey. And I think that a lot of studios saw that as a Daisy Ridley issue rather than a fanboy issue, when the fanboys can't handle a woman being the main part of things. And I'm so happy that Daisy Ridley's not only getting her own singular film, solo film, if not trilogy, but also being the center point of the Star Wars universe from now on. Get your fucking bag. Love it. And I also love Rey. Rey has been one of my favorite characters in the last decade in film. So I'm so glad. Some Lucasfilm directors are aware of what's going on with other films and how they interconnect. And honestly, I think this can be good and bad when it comes to things. I think that if you have films around the same era that are working together, you want them to be in the know what's going on. If you have films from the Old Republic and then one in the Rey saga, it's relatively okay. I feel like you're gonna have fans be upset no matter what when it comes to these projects. So I mean, ironing out the details when it comes to lore and just like continuity, I think is the only issue you can run into there. And honestly, I don't think they'll have that big of an issue. The MCU ran perfectly fine with that, and Kathleen Kennedy seems to have her hands on it. Kevin Feige in her corner to help her out when it comes to ironing these issues out, and I think that they're in perfect fine hands. I think that can be an issue, but it's not necessarily an issue when it comes to Star Wars. The original trilogy is not considered the Old Testament when it comes to Star Wars, and it seems like the issue now is that no one can agree where to go from the OG or now the Skywalker Saga finally being wrapped. Go on also to say that Star Wars is a nostalgia-based enterprise and they're running out of ways to exploit the nostalgia. The thing is that the OG trilogy is great. It's fucking fantastic. One of the greatest trilogies of all time, don't get me wrong, but we have to move on. Star Wars, if you want to continue to evolve and change, you have to move on from the original identity that it was. You have to get into Andor, which is a fucking political war thriller. You can get into so many things. You can get into a fucking heist. Solo was a divergence from things, but it was a heist. It was intriguing to go into that different direction when it comes to Star Wars. Star Wars has had this single space opera identity for 40 something years now. It's time to move on. It's time to grow. It's time to become something different. And I think you can best exploit that by changing genres with every film, or going into, hey, we don't need to care about the Skywalker Saga. The Skywalkers have been the center point of this for 45 years. It's time to, hey, maybe let's go check out this corner of the universe. Let's go check out the Old Republic. Let's go check out I don't know, maybe 1,000 years after Rey dies, or something of the line. You can create new nostalgia for new generations. Star Wars has succeeded because it has 3 generations. It has the OG trilogy fans, like my parents, my like that era of people. That's what they grew up with. That's the nostalgia they have. Their nostalgia is done for. When you think about trends, they pop up every 20 to 30 years, and they exploit that. Stranger Things exploited the 80s back in 2015, 16, whatever it was, and now this is back into the 90s. That's the second generation of fans, that being the prequel fans. Those are like me, my buddy Geek. Those people, you're exploiting enough with Kenobi and stuff like that. You continue to actually talk about some of those things because the time between episode 2 and 3 had the Clone Wars, but we don't really know what happened between episode 1 and 2. Unless you read books, but the casual fan doesn't know that. Or you can talk about, I don't know, between 3 and Solo, before the Death Stars were created, that there's an interesting time period where you can talk about and grow from that. And then there's the third generation, which is the new generation that grew up on the sequel trilogy. I know a lot of people don't think that people love the sequel trilogy and people didn't really care for it, but there's kids who want to see every single one of those films. I can tell you right now, in 10 to 15 years, we're probably not even that, probably in the next 5 years, we'll start hearing from a new generation of fans being like, The Last Jedi is my favorite film of all time, I loved Force Awakens, I love The Rise of Skywalker. They're wrong for the last opinion, but that's a new generation of fans that you can continue to grow. And that's the thing with Star Wars, you need to have the continual growth. You need to explore ideas, and not stick to the same old, and that's how you continue to grow your fans, and then you continue to have future generations of fans, because a lot of series will go back to what they were and think that's how it works, but it's not fucking sports uniforms and logos. It's IP, it's an identity, it's a theme. It's not like design. You just grow. You can't be stuck in the old ways. Do they make Skywalker films still? Do they continue with the Rey story and build into that, make it a Skywalker saga continuation with 10, 11, and 12, which is 3 films? Or did you go off and make solo films for Rey? Do you go make solo films for Qui-Gon or something like that? And that's an interesting question to ask yourself, because people saw Solo and they said, I don't want any of this, but you gotta realize that Solo came out at a really rough time. Came out in 2019, where it came out between Captain Marvel and our Black Panther, and then Endgame. It came out into the worst time possible for a film to drop that wasn't a Star Wars film. It was a Han Solo film, and it's interesting. I think you just have to pick the character right. I think that there's characters you can explore. A Darth Vader R-rated film, I think a lot of people are on board with it. They've been on board with that for the last 20 years. I think you can have the standalone films at the same time as grow the franchise forward with 8 Knights of the Old Republic. You can grow it in different ways, different things at the same time, and not oversaturate the market. I think you get 1 film per year for Star Wars, I think is good. If not, space it out a little bit. 1 film every 2 years is perfect. And the fans are happy, and people aren't sick of Star Wars. I think the issue is that you continue on building in 10, 11, 12, and further on the new generation of fans, like I was talking about earlier, continues to grow, possibly, but I think the issue is that people, at some point in a franchise, get sick of the numbers. They get sick of, this is the 10th episode, the 11th episode. They want to be done eventually, and as bad as Rise of Skywalker was, in my opinion, it did have an ending. It ended the Skywalkers. Rey is a Skywalker. She has claimed that name, but it ended the bloodline of the Skywalkers. That family is done. That bloodline is done. Rey carries on the name and their legacy, but not their bloodline. And that's a good place where you can start a new series and journey off somewhere else and become something different and claim a new identity. And that there may be fans who are just like, I am original Skywalker Saga fans, and then you have another generation of fans who are claiming this new era of Star Wars. And I think that's really important. The thing I keep seeing when it comes to Disney is they keep wanting to go back. When it goes back to the OG, it goes back to the whatever. It's time to grow. It's time to explore. It's time to grow. The Acolyte, as many people disliked it, which is fair assessment if it's not for the fucking bullshit people were pushing online. It was an ambitious idea to go forward. It was ambitious to grow and look for new things, and I think that's really important going forward, is to grow. Star Wars is such an influential piece of media, and it can't be stuck in its ways. And it seems like the TV side of things, like The Mandalorian and stuff like that, aren't having the main issue when it comes to the movie sides of things, when it comes to like the Rey films and the whatever they want to go with future. They don't know where to go, and honestly build off the TV shows. Start a TV show, give it a season or two. As much as I hate the one season it's over in 8 episodes, but you can see what people are interested in. If you dip your toes into it, I think people will come, and they'll eventually show interest in the idea. I think The Acolyte was doing pretty good numbers, as much as people didn't like it online. But you gotta remember, Disney, Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, who the fuck is in charge? The internet is a very small population of people in an echo chamber, especially Twitter. I think it's better to look at the numbers and see how it's going. I think you need to look at the numbers and see how people are going, and if it's growing each week by week, but when they drop episodes, perfect. It means people are interested in your idea, and people want to go see it. And then you can, hey, after The Acolyte, we're dropping a Darth Plagueis era film or whatever. It's a good way to experiment, in my opinion. But I feel like if you have that freedom of the TV shows, perfect. Use it to your advantage. Do not be shy with it. Don't be polite with it. Go full forward with it. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Whatever. We move on. We find a new idea. And I think that at the end of the day, we need to find new ideas in Star Wars. And Star Wars is a fucking masterpiece of a fucking saga. You just need to know where to grow and where to build, instead of reversing back to your old ways. Just go forward. Don't go back. Go forward.